Okay, I'm doing something a little bit different this time around. This is a very unique video because I've got some thoughts. So, a while ago, I picked up this boy. We all know it, Steve Wilson's The Overview. Picked it up on physical format. I listened to it prior to its release and thought it was okay. I did a full review of it. You can check that out right up there. And my main criticism of this project was how it felt disjointed, how the pieces didn't really have a cohesive flow from one movement to another, and how Steven Wilson was saying that this record was like two tracks with little movements moving throughout it. And, a little peek behind the curtain how things go down here on the Notes Reviews channel. More often than not, especially for these bigger releases, I'll get the album ahead of time so that I can digest the album, have a fully flushed out thought process of what I want to say about these records, so I can release a review either prior to the album being fully released or in and around when the release date is of the record. So I listened to the record, the publishing house, the old studio there, sent me a download for the record, so I listened to it on my old iPod, just as Steven Wilson intended it, I'm sure, and was a little disappointed. And my main criticism, as I mentioned, was the construction of the album. The actual music itself was pretty good, but the structure, the flow of the record did not satisfy my itch, of what I wanted for Steven Wilson. Then, I put the album on the shelf. I went about my days. I started listening to other new releases that were coming and going. And the local record store had the record, and I figured, it's a good price. It's a fairly digestible record. I might as well pick it up. Put it on the old turntable, and I was confused. I was a little taken back because what I was hearing was not what I was given by the record company. So I've got a couple things that I wanted to get off my chest. First and foremost, I still stand by the review that I gave of the album that I heard initially, right? Like those were the thoughts and feelings that I had for the record upon which I was given. Sadly, depending on which format you're listening to, that's not necessarily the album that you might be hearing. So I want to clarify first that the rating and my initial thoughts that I had of Steven Wilson's The Overview are still exactly as I feel about it based on the album that I was given. And I believe that is the streaming divided record that a lot of people heard of their digital downloads. Secondly, though, and I think most importantly, this is a little bit of egg on my face, but also the studio for giving me I don't want to say a compromised version of the record, but a version of the record that I wouldn't have enjoyed more so. I would have been a lot more favorable to the record if this record, the actual record itself, was what I was listening to. Because there is a difference of format, like the sounds that you're hearing from a cassette tape are going to be different than the sounds that you're hearing from a vinyl, which is going to be different than a CD, which is going to be different than the actual digital file that you stream online. A lot of that is just within the media itself, whatever you're listening to, for a record, it's going to be the pops, it's going to be the crackles. On a cassette tape, it's going to be the hiss, it's going to be the motor running within it, and within a digital download, it's going to be the digital soundscapes. It's going to be a digital format. So, it might be mild, it might be minute, but there is still a difference of what you're hearing. Similarly, how I enjoy music, predominantly I like to listen to records, so there is this ritual of getting up, flipping the album over, putting the needle down, having a larger thing to hold and, enjoy and process. And there's a tactileness to it. And I do know that inherently that is lost when you're dealing with a digital download. So I always try to keep that at the door whenever I'm listening to a pre-release or a purely digital file of an album. It's like, okay, I'm not going to get the tactileness. I'm not going to get the larger soundscapes. I'm not going to get the actual physicality of a record. And so I never really attribute that when I'm reviewing music. But what Mr. Wilson has done within the overview, and I don't know if it's Mr. Wilson or if it is within the record company, within the studio, whoever it was, but they've kind of flipped this around a little bit, and I feel like that's a disservice to reviewers because, as I mentioned, I would be a lot more favorable to this record if this was what I had initially heard. I was very pleasantly surprised, being like, oh, my main criticism that the tracks are disjointed. There's no connective tissue. There's no through line of these tracks, and they just feel very disjointed. That main criticism is now gone when I listen to the vinyl because it isn't disjointed. There is a connective tissue. The tracks flow beautifully from one movement to a next. I could say that the two tracks that are found on this record of Objects Outlive Us and The Overview are two tracks that I couldn't say on the digital download. Objects Outlive Us is a singular track with individual movements found throughout it. The Overview is a single track with individual movements flowing throughout it. That was severed on the digital download. And this is another thing that I want to at least point out, and I want to echo what my buddy Ian over at Rhyme Signatures has mentioned before, specifically within this project, that Steven Wilson has done within at least his last 2, if not 3 releases, where he'll rent out a studio, he'll rent out a music venue, and play it in this, 14.15 speaker Dolby Atmos Ultra Deluxe surround sound, where you're getting the perfect iteration of this record that honestly can never be replicated. I get that is the ultimate way to listen to this record, but outside of the people that are in the room at that moment, that's the only time you're ever going to be able to listen to your album properly. Every other time is just going to be an imitation of what it should be, and that's not how you need to approach your music. Sure, having a 5.1 surround sound, Blu-ray, 4K, Ultra Deluxe style is really great and neat, but unless you have that, tens of thousands of dollars of a stereo system with the players and the surround sound in order to play it, you're not going to experience the album at which it's meant to be listened to. And I don't know if the Overview is meant to be listened to in that way. For me, the ultimate way to listen to this record now is through the vinyl. That is a massive shame because I think my ultimate rating for that record of the Overview was either like a download or like a stream. But for me now, it elevates it to pick it up in physical format. And I feel like they done me dirty, and they done the rest of the progressive rock landscape dirty, because I would have recommended this further on. And that's a little bit of egg on my face because I had a couple people in my comments being like, well, which version of this record did you listen to? And I'm like, well, unless we're dealing with a transatlantic with the Ultimate Universe where there are very distinct versions of the record, you shouldn't need to do homework in order to listen to the ultimate version of this record. So yeah, I'm a little peeved at that, because I want to give you, the viewer, a proper representation of the music that I'm finding on whatever it is that I'm reviewing, and I felt like I couldn't give you a proper review of the Overview based on what I was listening to on streaming and on the digital download. I feel like the proper way to listen to it is through the vinyl. And if you do not have a record player, that puts you at a disservice, because you can't listen to it in the way that I feel like this album should be listened to. So that's a little bit of a rambling rant of where I find myself. I got a lot of thoughts about this, and I don't usually get this riled up. Yeah, you see me so angry here. But it kind of upset me a little bit, being like, well, you want me to review your album, and I am grateful for that. I am always grateful whenever a band reaches out to me, especially somebody as big as Steven Wilson. Now, Steven Wilson didn't. It was his company, the distributor. But still, they were operating under the impression that we want to raise awareness of this, and when you're giving me an album that is in a different format, like at least let me know about that. Because I could have at least touched upon that. As I said, in the end, my ultimate thoughts and ratings are still very valid of that initial review of the overview. If I were to amend it in any way, it would be, sure, listen to it on streaming, whatever, but this is the ultimate way to listen to the album. This is my most enjoyable way of listening to the album. And I think, both Steven Wilson and the distributor of Friction and Virgin kind of did us a disservice by doing it this way, because I was on the fence of picking this up in physical format, because I was like, I don't know, I didn't really connect with the album itself, but I definitely connected with it here. So, was I wrong? Yes and no. I was wrong in that my ultimate thought of this is not the ultimate thought of what I had for my digital download, because it's two different albums. So, that's my thoughts about it. I want to know what your thoughts are about this. What do you think about how this album was rolled out? How do you think about how this album finally solidified itself? How have you listened to this record? Have you heard the vinyl? Have you only listened to the digital streaming site? This album is such an interesting piece. Not just talking about the music that's found within it, but how it was rolled out. Very little promotional work. You had a couple interviews with him. No singles off of this record. What a strange beast. What a strange beast. But anyway, let me know about your thoughts, how you had experienced this album. Have you heard the vinyl? Have you heard the digital download? Is it different than the CD? Because I haven't heard the CD, and I'm not shelling out, 20 Canadian dollars to just listen to the CD to see if it's similar or different. Let me know all about that by commenting down below. And I think that's where I'm going to leave you guys today, because those are my full thoughts. That's what I've got about this. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe. And I hope you guys are enjoying yourself. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.